Hey, my friends. Sorry it's so late, but I got caught up doing something really important. You know, eating maple pecan pie. Mm, delicious. It was so good. It was so good I forgot that I was supposed to read to you. So I just went in and put my took my contacts out, put my glasses on, and I was brushing my teeth, and then I realized, wait a minute, something's missing. Oops, I forgot to read. So here I am, reading late. But better late than never, right? Here we go. We left off last night at the end of chapter 7, where Daniel has just recounted the tick marks on the log next to the fireplace. And he has counted 35. And that makes exactly 5 weeks. Pa and Ma could come today, he thinks. Chapter 8. All afternoon they watched for Pa and Ma, and listened. Each small sound seemed like it could be Pa's shout or Zeke's high, excited voice calling their names. The boys stopped what they were doing and stood stock still, waiting. But no familiar figures stepped out of the trees. Disappointed, they turned back to their work. Even that night, wrapped up against the cold on his new bed of leaves, Daniel thought he heard voices. What was that? He whispered to his brother Will. But Will didn't answer. Of course, he was asleep. It was only an owl, Daniel told himself. Pa wouldn't be traveling in the dark of night, not in this dense forest, not with a new baby. He knew that. No reason why they would come on this particular day anyway. Pa said 5 weeks, 6 at the outside. That could mean just about any day. But it's best not to think about it. It's best just to keep busy. So the next morning, Daniel looked over the cabin again. More nuts, he thought. That was what they needed. Their little pile wouldn't last long once the whole family was here. Besides, nuts were plentiful now, and if they gathered a good amount, they could last well into winter, and Ma would like that. Bring the bucket, Will, he said. We're going to collect a real supply of nuts. And thinking of the bear, Daniel picked up the axe this time. But then he set it down. It was too heavy to carry, and they wouldn't be going far from the cabin. So instead, he slipped his knife into his pocket. They had already gathered nuts along the path to the creek, so they struck off in the opposite direction. Daniel took care to notice where the sun was in the sky. That way, there would be no trouble finding their way back. And just as he'd thought, nuts were falling everywhere. Hickory nuts in their green shells, light-colored walnuts, bright brown chestnuts popping out of their spiny green jackets. The boys stooped to pick them up, dropping them into the bucket with a dull clang. Daniel kept a sharp eye out for bears or any other wild critter that might have a liking for nuts. Look, called Will, a beech tree. Beech nuts were sweet. Their little sisters, Sarah and Abby, would like them. Daniel followed Will to the base of a huge tree with sprawling limbs and pale gray bark. They dug under the carpet of leaves, coming up with a handful of small, light brown nuts. Soon after that, Will spotted a butternut tree. Ma will want plenty of those, Daniel said. She used the green husks for the dye when she made clothing for the family. Anything dipped into the dye turned a deep yellow-brown color that Ma specially favored. It didn't take long to fill the buckets. Their pockets were bulging too. We best get back to the cabin, Daniel decided. We can empty out the bucket and look for more. He looked up at the sun to point their way home, but there was no sun. The sky had clouded over. It was an even gray in every direction. Daniel looked back over his shoulder. They had come that way, hadn't they? Yeah, they must have. Except that thick vine hanging down from that oak tree didn't look familiar, and nor did that mossy log sticking up at the broken angle. "Will," he said, "which way is the cabin?" Will set down the bucket. That way." He pointed in the other direction. "Are you sure?" Will turned around, studying the trees. "No," he said. "Guess it could be the other way." Daniel felt a flutter of fear rising in his stomach. He tried to swallow it down. They hadn't come that far from the cabin. They were bound to find their way back. Most likely the sun would come out again, and then he'd know. And all they had to do was just stay calm. Looking up at the sky, though, Daniel knew that the sun wasn't coming back. It had grown darker, as if the rain might be coming. "We need to think on this," he said to Will. Slowly, he walked around the butternut tree, searching for anything he might have seen before, or any sign of their own tracks on the ground. But leaves covered any tracks there might have been, and nothing else stood out to prod his memory. In the greenish light, all of those massive trees looked alike. They were a solid wall circling them on all sides. And Daniel had that sudden strange feeling that the trees were saying something to him. "We are in charge here," they whispered. "You are nothing compared to us. You cannot beat us with your puny axes and knives. We will do what we want with you." No, couldn't be. He just couldn't think that way, Daniel thought. But Daniel did hear something. A small skittering sound behind him, and turning quickly, he saw... What time is it? Oh, boys and girls, it's really getting late, so we'll start right there tomorrow. I'm sorry we're out of time, but you know what to do. Go and brush your teeth, wash your hands, get that face washed, and tell your family you love them. Stay tuned for the rest of the story.